After climbing to the top of the corporate ladder, she finally made love a priority.
Whatever she was missing, he was able to fulfill it. They were attached at the hip. Really, the only time they separated was when both of them went to work.
But a fateful December night will tear them apart forever.
Okay, just bring up some Pepsi tape.
There was blood all around her, blood on the walls.
She has been dead for quite some time.
When the men closest to her point the finger at each other, who's telling the truth?
He's a stalker. I really don't trust him at all. This guy is like real jealous, controlling.
He was blackmailing her and extorting her for money.
She gave him everything, money, bought a car for him, pays for everything.
Get out! Before I call the cops.
It got to the point where I just couldn't be there.
He was a very violent person, the definition of dangerous.
December 2019. With only days until Christmas, residents in West Palm Beach, Florida are preparing for the holiday season.
This particular area of Florida is surrounded by marinas, yachts, and it's right next door to Palm Beach County, which is home to a lot of American billionaires.
It's known as a very upscale, safe area.
But on the evening of December 16th, as most residents are fast asleep, the quiet tranquility is shattered after the clock strikes midnight.
The department received a 911 call from an individual they identified as Ronald Gamble.
West Palm PD, what's your emergency?
Come quick, my girlfriend needs help. Please.
He had come home from being away for the weekend and found a bloody scene.
He finds his girlfriend, 52-year-old Rochelle Demings, laying in a pool of her own blood.
Oh my God, Rochelle, she's not breathing.
West Palm Beach police were immediately dispatched to the scene.
Come on outside for me. Okay, you didn't touch her at all. Have you moved her at all? You checked her or anything? Okay, is anybody else in the home?
I don't think so.
Okay.
When the officer looks inside the door, he is taken aback by what he sees.
The officer can tell there's no use trying CPR.
It looks like Rochelle has been dead for quite some time.
Okay, just bring up some Pepsi tape.
At that point, the officer radios down to homicide detectives to start an investigation.
All right, we got the medics. They're going to come check on her, but it doesn't look good, bud.
"52-year-old mother of two, Rochelle Demings, was as accomplished as they come.
She had 2 bachelor's degrees, 2 associate's degrees. She also went on to get her master's degree.
A gruesome and perplexing mystery unfolds.
You got blood in the car, you got a missing person, but you got nobody.
To anyone that she crossed paths with.
A rookie detective takes out one of the most personal
She was a
cases
very
of his
accomplished
career.
federal employee with the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs.
She was the chief of
desperate search for
at the
answers.
West Palm Beach VA. HIMSS,
Everyone had a story to tell, but no one was telling the
Service.
truth.
Her employees
Leads to
describe
an
her as someone who was
unsettling
always
revelation.
willing to help, always willing to teach them how to elevate their career as well.
Where the body's dumped.
Even though she was a
In a
chief, she
showdown
would
with
be
the prime
alongside of
suspect.
us working
You can see
every
the
day if
torment
we
on his
got
face.
behind. She
Will
was
the
down in the
truth
trenches with us.
But despite the success she'd built, something was still missing.
Her kids were grown, and after 20 years of marriage, she divorced their father. So she was missing companionship, she was missing romance.
Although Rochelle was very well respected in her industry, she got lonely.
So Rochelle decided to take action.
She went online, and it didn't take long until she was matched with Ronald Gamble.
Ronald wasn't as esteemed or decorated as Rochelle. However, he did work different temp agency jobs.
On their first date, sparks flew.
He seemed to be a really nice guy, and he was very supportive of all of the things that Rochelle had going on in her life.
You know, you are really something else.
I was just glad I'm able to make you smile, you know?
He was very charming. He made Rochelle laugh. He was able to make Rochelle feel like that whatever piece she was missing, he was able to fulfill it.
And after that first date, their relationship moved fast.
Ronald was constantly at Rochelle's house. They were tied together at the hip.
He moved in with her pretty quickly.
After 3 years of dating, they actually upgraded their lifestyle and they moved into a beautiful, amazing new condo in West Palm Beach.
But after the couple had spent only a few weeks in their new home, detectives are there to begin a homicide investigation.
We were confronted with Miss Demings, who's laying on the floor right in the breezeway or the foyer area of this apartment. There's a large quantity of blood on the ground, and she's obviously deceased.
It was absolutely a terrible scene.
It's clear to police that whatever happened in that apartment, Rochelle died a violent death.
The only way that you could get around her was to jump over her. So it was a very difficult scene to work because all of the blood.
It was really hard for the police to find out the source of where her blood was coming from, but it did appear as though the blood was coming from her head.
And from the looks of it, Rochelle's been dead for a few days.
There was lots of blood. It was dark blood, which looked like it had been sitting there for a while. Some looked like it was dried because of the length of time that it had been there.
There was actually some pieces of mail that were in very close proximity to her body at the time.
They wonder if she was holding the letters when she was attacked and dropped them.
But aside from the gory scene in the entryway, nothing in the apartment seems amiss.
Nothing appeared to be stolen.
The door wasn't broken, so it really didn't seem like somebody entered that shouldn't be there.
Her boyfriend's the one that found her?
Yes. He's been very cooperative so far.
Okay.
Detectives are eager to speak with Ronald themselves to learn more.
They're very curious to see if he knew about who would be able to cause this kind of harm to Rochelle.
Or did he have something to do with it?
After years of prioritizing her successful career, 52-year-old Rochelle Demings had found love at long last.
She fell head over heels in love with a man named Ronald Gamble. The two had just moved into a place together in West Palm Beach.
They wanted to spend as much time as they could together.
But now the couple's new condo is a crime scene.
Rochelle was located on the floor of the condo with some type of head injury that produced a lot of blood.
As word spreads to Rochelle's friends, family, and co-workers, they're heartbroken.
So I get to work, and people were emotional and everything. They grab me, and they tell me that Rochelle is dead. My whole professional world had collapsed. Like, what the F you mean she dead? So, didn't make it through the day at all. Another person ended up taking me home.
Rochelle's boyfriend, Ronald Gamble, also seems shaken up.
Ronald was the one that called 911 after he returned to the condo and found Rochelle.
Detectives are very curious to see if he knew about who would be able to cause this kind of harm to Rochelle.
Or did he have something to do with it?
Detectives bring Ronald back to the station for an official statement.
He had no problem speaking to us at all. He's very talkative. He's very open about things.
How long have you two been together?
I would say 3 years now.
He explained that he and Miss Demings have been dating for a few years and that they had just moved to this apartment.
But Ronald says there's one person who had recently come between them, Rochelle's 27-year-old son, Dan.
They had a wonderful relationship up and until The son came from Ohio.
What happened was, okay, I lived with her for a while, and then all of a sudden, her son comes out of nowhere. Her son is a stalker.
When detectives ask Ronald to elaborate, he starts at the beginning.
When Dan decided to move from Cleveland, Ohio to Florida, he had nowhere else to go. So Rochelle, being the mother that she is, she allowed Dan to come home to her home. But Ronald was very reluctant against that.
After Dan moved in, Ronald says the entire dynamic between him and Rochelle shifted.
He said they had started having disagreements and arguing.
He's an adult, Rochelle. He needs to grow up and get his own place.
You just don't understand. That is my only son.
We've never had any trouble before he came, never. He's always involved in our life. Like, he won't just get out of our lives.
And it became an issue that she gave him everything, money, bought a car for him, pays for his phone bill, pays for everything.
Ronald got fed up. He made the statement that if Dan wasn't going to pay bills, then Dan had to get out. Dan did not like that.
Do and get out. Hey, what's going on in here?
You're 27. She doesn't owe you. I keep telling him that. Every time he tries, I say, bro, get out. Your mom don't owe you, bro. Get from around us. You're grown.
Then Ronald says things took a turn for the worst.
He bust me in the head with a hot sauce bottle.
Get out! Before I call the cops.
And I called the police out. And I told them, hey man, the guy that assaulted me.
Ronald ended up pressing charges and Dan was arrested. He was charged with aggravated battery and taken to jail.
But Ronald claims Dan's volatile behavior continued.
A few weeks later, Ronald and Rochelle woke up to the sound of glass smashing. When they went to see what it was, or who it was Dan.
What the hell are you doing?
What are you doing?
He punched through their window, trying to get in.
I don't know why he did it, but he did it and cut his arm all up. I said, babe, you got to remove him from our lives. We can't live like this. You're a professional. I work. He doesn't want to do nothing with his life.
Get out before I call the cops.
Once again, Ronald had Dan arrested.
So it's been month after month, we've had the police over there on him within a year, about at least 20 or 30 times. I really don't trust him at all.
And Ronald says the apartment complex also became fed up with the drama.
Because of the issues that the son and he were having and the trouble that it was causing, they had asked them to leave.
They were evicted from their apartment.
Ronald felt like Dan was ruining what he had with Rochelle, so that led him to file a restraining order against Dan.
Within a month, the couple had found a new place to live. And with Dan out of the picture, Ronald says it felt like a new beginning.
They were starting new, and her son would not know where they lived.
But Ronald says he believes Dan found them once again.
He's obsessed with his mom. And I don't know, I've seen some other weird things I don't want to say. Makes me think, other things are going on too.
Say it. What are you going to say?
Nothing could prepare them for what came out of Ronald's mouth next.
He talks about some wild accusations.
That's nasty. No, that's not who she was as a person.
Detectives in West Palm Beach are investigating the murder of 52-year-old Rochelle Demings.
She was found in a pool of blood by her boyfriend, Ronald Gamble. It was clear she had been brutally attacked.
And now Ronald is raising suspicion about Rochelle's own son.
He claims that Dan was jealous of his relationship with Rochelle.
According to Ronald, Dan had been violent towards them in the past, and they even had to file a restraining order against him.
He's obsessed with his mom. And I don't know, I've seen some other weird things I don't want to say. Makes me think, other things are going on too.
Say it. What are you going to say?
He believed that Rochelle and Dan didn't have a typical mother-son relationship.
He talks about some wild accusations about the possibility that Miss Demings and her son were engaged in sexual activity.
I think they were sleeping together a whole lot of times.
He would say that she would be on the phone with him, and he believed that they were having phone sex or something to that extent.
Anybody that stays on the phone with their son all the time, there's got to be something else going on.
It's a shocking claim, and one detectives take with a grain of salt.
That's not Rochelle. That's nasty. No. That's not who she was as a person. That's not who she was as a mother.
There was absolutely no proof, none. But Ronald Gamble felt so strongly that this woman should not be taking this good care of her adult son.
Ronald says 3 days ago he found evidence that Rochelle was still taking care of Dan, even after they moved into their new condo to get away from him.
He was going through the mail on Friday the 13th.
He found mail addressed to Dan, and that set him off. He said there was no reason why Dan's mail should be coming to that address. Dan wasn't supposed to even know the address.
He will not leave us alone. And when I seen that mail with his name on it, and so now once I seen that, I said, he must have a key here. So now I'm heated.
He confronted Rochelle about what he discovered.
What's this doing in our mail?
I don't know.
He even asked Rochelle if she had planned on giving a key to Dan to their new condo.
Tell me the truth. Did you give him a key?
What? No.
She kind of gets like, what are you talking about? She was like, oh, don't worry about that. So I'm like, really?
Rochelle tried to reassure Ronald that no, Dan had no idea of where they lived. However, Ronald was still infuriated. He was convinced that Dan was going to ruin their lives again.
Rochelle, this is supposed to be a fresh start for us. I can't keep doing this.
Ronald says at that point he just wanted to leave, but there was one problem.
His car wasn't working at the time.
I said, you know what? Just give me the key to your car, and I'm gonna go to Orlando and have somebody to come and get my car out of here.
He said Rochelle jumped in front of him, preventing him from leaving.
And she was like talking. To be honest, she was talking. So when I get by the door, getting ready to go out, she kind of pushed the door back, and I said, why you that? And she slapped the out of me.
He said what happened next, he snapped.
In his words, he said, I hit her.
And I'm not gonna lie, I hit her.
In December of 2019, as most people are preparing for the upcoming holiday season, detectives in West Palm Beach are listening to a harrowing story from 48-year-old Ronald Gamble.
He admits that on Friday the 13th, he and Rochelle Demings got into a huge argument about her son. This was just 3 days before Rochelle's body was discovered.
With the argument becoming more and more heated, Ronald says he tried to leave.
So when I get by the door and getting ready to go out, she kind of pushed the door back, and I said, why you that? And she slapped the out of me.
Ronald says that's when he snapped.
And I'm not gonna lie, I hit her. I hit her with my hand, and I might have hit her in her head really hard. I'm gonna be honest with you. So after I seen her do that, she fell to the ground, like right there.
But Ronald insists she was still alive.
Did you see her get up?
No, sir, to be honest, because I locked the door, trying to get out of there.
He got out the door and locked it behind him and never looked back. He said he went to visit a friend in Orlando.
call you at all?
Actually, to be honest with you, I turned my phone off because I'm so pissed off with what's going on
in Augusta, Georgia. A brutal and puzzling murder.
Orlando.
She's laying on the bed naked.
He said he drove 2.5 hours to Orlando in Rochelle's car to stay with a friend and clear his head.
We asked him, did you hit her hard enough that you could have killed her?
You don't think you could have hit her hard enough to kill her?
Don't tell me that.
He said what he did could not have caused her death the way it happened.
Ronald insists that when he returned home after spending the weekend in Orlando, he fully expected to find his girlfriend alive and well.
By the time he returned on the 16th, he was ready to have a conversation with Rochelle.
When you came home tonight, what time did you get there?
I'm going to say it's after 12. I don't know exactly what time it was, but it had to be after 12.
He said the door was locked.
So when you opened the door and you walked in, what happened?
Immediately, he saw Rochelle lying in a pool of blood.
I kind of freak out, but I opened the door and I was like, oh my God, you know, but I closed the door back. Because I don't know what's going. She's not moving. So I jump over her and I immediately get on the phone and call 911.
West Palm PD, what's your emergency?
Come quick, my girlfriend needs help, please.
Ronald insists the only person who could have done this to Rochelle was her son, Dan.
He has this stuff to his mom in my presence. And I would have to intervene. Man, that dude was doing so much stuff to us.
But detectives aren't buying Ronald's story, and their suspicions are further confirmed by the results of Rochelle's autopsy report.
The autopsy reveals that due to the decomposition of her body, she actually died 3 days before she was found, which was December 13th.
That was the same day that Ronald admits to hitting her.
Rochelle had 5 deep lacerations to the top of her skull. She had a contusion to her lip, severe swelling to her left eye, and fractures to the orbital bone on her left side. The fatal wound was a lateral skull fracture on the back of her skull that essentially cracked her head open.
What are the odds that on the same day Ronald admits to getting into a physical altercation with her, someone else came in and essentially beat her to death?
However, detectives aren't ready to arrest Ronald for the crime just yet.
And if I just simply made an arrest fast, without evidence, without doing DNA and phone records and what have you, that's going to hurt us. And I didn't want to do that.
So, detectives follow up with Rochelle's son, Dan.
They let him know right away that Ronald was trying to pin the crime on him.
Mr. Gamble basically was saying he didn't do it. And the only person he said, you.
Of course he does, sir.
Of course he does. So I have to come up here and talk to you about that.
Dan seems frustrated and offended that police even have to investigate Ronald's claims.
Had you and your mother ever gotten into a physical altercation before?
Never.
Do you have anything to do with your mother's death?
No, sir.
Dan says the only person who could have done this is Ronald Gamble.
Dan says that his mother's relationship with Ronald was rocky from the start, and it only got worse.
This guy is like a real jealous, controlling, like, I just call him the devil and I meant that for a reason.
Detectives in West Palm Beach, Florida are speaking with the son of Rochelle Demings after her boyfriend, Ronald Gamble, implicated him for her gruesome murder.
They see that he's very torn up about losing his mother. Rochelle was his best friend, and he's so hurt that he lost her.
Do you have anything to do with your mother's death?
No, sir.
Dan says he believes that Ronald Gamble was his mother's killer and that their relationship was problematic from the very beginning.
So they met off like a dating site, and it was rocky. This was before I came down there. It was rocky. She had kicked him out. You know, my mom, she was a sucker for love.
Dan says Ronald tried to isolate his mother from the rest of their family.
He told my mother it was disrespectful he talked to me while he's around. He told my mother that she think my mother's having sex with me.
Yeah, he mentioned that. I was going to ask about that. Why would he think that?
Because the way the relationship me and my mother, I don't know about what he thinks of sex. But one, like I told me, my mother was like this. You know what I'm saying? That was my best friend. We was tight. You know what I'm saying?
Dan admits that he and Ronald got into some physical altercations in the past, but says Ronald was the aggressor.
Had he ever been violent with her before?
Yes.
How so? What happened?
I hit him in the head.
Rochelle!
What?
Your car keeps getting declined.
I don't know what happened.
You know how embarrassing?
He ran to the store for my mom there 2 bottles of wine. She didn't have enough on her card, so he felt like embarrassed. You know what I'm saying? So he talking crazy to her. I'm standing out of it for the most part.
But when Ronald started calling his mother names, Dan couldn't stay out of it any longer.
Dan saw that Mr. Gamble was just taking advantage of Miss Demings and her kind nature, and Dan would get really, really upset.
Hey! What's how you talking to my mom like that? Who the hell you talking to?
I don't know. If y'all argue, y'all, you know what I'm saying? But don't call my mother name or none of that bullshit. So he, like, tried to hit me up.
Dan says his mother moved in to defend him.
My mom came and grabbed me, like, you know, get off my son. He pushed her to the ground.
Dan said he wasn't going to sit by and watch Ronald do that to his mother, so he grabbed the closest thing, which was the hot sauce bottle.
So I hit him in the head, you know, busted his head open. And it was self-defense, though. You know, it really was. It was just Satan, man.
Get out! Before I call the cops.
He says after that incident, he knew that he couldn't go back to his mother's house.
It got to the point where I just couldn't be there, you know what I'm saying?
But Dan continued keeping tabs on his mother, worried for her safety.
I heard them in there arguing.
You know how embarrassing it is? I don't know what stupid old
because I couldn't get in, you know, I had no key. He really, like, took my own life over for real, like, ran, you know, and I think she was really scared.
He was so concerned about what was happening in the home, he did the next best thing that he thought he could do.
So I punched the window. Police that came that day. And I stitched that stuff. My mom got kicked out for that. So, you know, once she got kicked out of there, it was kind of my fault.
Dan admits when Ronald and his mother moved into their new condo, she didn't share the location with him, but she had good reason.
It wasn't because she was afraid of her son. It was because she was afraid of Ronald. She was trying to protect Dan until she could figure out a way to get away from Ronald for good.
So how did Dan's mail end up at the new condo?
They said, well, if you didn't know where your mother was living, why are you getting mail to her new place?
And Dan explained to them, because he was technically homeless, the mail that he was receiving at the other apartment was being forwarded to the new condo.
Did she give you a key?
I never knew where she stayed.
Detectives are inclined to believe Dan's version of events, especially when they sit down with Rochelle's other family members.
That's her heart. She loved him more than anything in this world.
You don't think he's capable of doing something like that?
I don't think he's capable of doing something like that to his mother.
Instead, they echo Dan's sentiments that Ronald Gamble is the one responsible for Rochelle's death.
She made the statement about, if anything happened to me, this MF did it.
They told police that Rochelle was in an abusive relationship. She wanted to leave Ronald, but she had to be strategic.
Rochelle had it, and she was done with this relationship. But as she told her friends and family members, she knew she couldn't just abruptly end it and walk away.
And Rochelle's family said she had good reason to be cautious.
Ronald was threatening to make her life hell if she tried to leave him.
She just kept saying he was blackmailing her. He was trying to exploit her for money, and he just wouldn't leave.
Ronald had some dirt on her that could possibly get her fired.
She had tried marijuana to help with her chronic nerve pain.
He ended up taking a picture of her smoking marijuana and then threatened to send it to her boss at the VA hospital. She had worked for the VA for over 30 years. She loved her job and she had so much to lose.
Ronald told Rochelle that she had to pay $1,200 to keep her secret.
And I'm like, you cannot get in trouble for what he's trying to blackmail you for. He can take a video of you smoking a cigarette and say it's weed. I'm like, only thing they can do is drug test you.
But Rochelle couldn't bear the idea of losing everything she'd worked for.
So she paid him $1,200.
Rochelle wanted to end it, but she knew he had a temper, so she was trying to do it delicately and to keep the peace. And some of her friends and family members got the impression that she was terrified of him.
She said, if anything happened to me, if I come up dead, if I come up missing, he did it.
And when detectives review surveillance from the evening of the murder, they feel even more confident in their case against Ronald Gamble.
We had video at the apartment complex, at least at the gates, to see what vehicles entered and exited and entered that night.
At no point does Dan or his vehicle enter the complex.
Homicide detectives in West Palm Beach investigating the mysterious death of 52-year-old Rochelle Demings believe that her live-in boyfriend, Ronald Gamble, is responsible for the crime.
Ronald tried to pin the crime on Rochelle's son, Dan, but during their investigation, police found his claims to be bogus.
Ms. Demings' son gave me his phone number, which we were able to use to see where he was on the night in question. His cell phone records show that he wasn't there.
Surveillance video from the apartment complex also proves Dan couldn't have been the person who killed his mother.
We had video at the apartment complex gates to see what vehicles exited and entered that night.
At no point does Dan or his vehicle enter the complex.
And the footage also shows Ronald leaving the complex several hours later than what he told investigators.
He left that apartment about 4 o'clock in the morning. So his version saying he was left at between 7:30 or 8 o'clock is not corroborated through the video at the front gate. He stayed there from the time of that fight until 4 o'clock in the morning, and Miss Demings is on the floor. If she's still alive, if she's dead, he remains in that house with her and never calls 911. So that was something that I felt was very damning.
There was only one person who could have done it, one person who had motive, and that was Ronald.
And now police believe they have what they need to charge him with the crime.
Ronald was arrested for second-degree murder. There's a distinction in degrees between first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and manslaughter, and it all turns to intent.
I don't believe it was a first-degree murder. I don't believe that he planned to do this. I believe that maybe she did hit him and he lost his cool.
And as investigators prepare for trial, they learn Ronald had a dangerous pattern of manipulation that started long before he met Rochelle.
Detectives spoke with the friend in Orlando that Ronald claimed to stay with after the murder.
He agreed to come to the Orlando Police Department, where he provided us a statement as well. He talked about Mr. Gamble being a manipulator who always has different women in and out of his life.
As long as I've known him, he has gone from one woman to another and moved in and used them to help pay bills.
Finding out the type of person that Ronald was, he really didn't want anything to do with him.
So he was surprised when Ronald showed up at his Orlando home unannounced on the morning of December 14th.
Ronald told him that he needed help getting a one-way ticket to California.
One way?
Yep, one way.
Also, he said that Mr. Gamble got a new phone, or he saw him changing out the SIM card to his phone.
At no point did Ronald mention the fight that he had with Rochelle before he left.
So why did Ronald return to the scene of the crime instead of skipping town?
You're wondering, well, why did you come back? I guess in the end, he knew he had to come back because where was the car? Where's their car gone? And we would have been able to track that. So he had to come back and do something. He had to come back and have some sort of explanation. And then he just wanted to minimize his involvement in it the best he could. So he's kind of like a narcissist. He wanted to talk. He wanted to tell us his story.
In September 2023, Ronald Gamble's trial for second-degree murder gets underway. Prosecutors paint a picture of a resentful and jealous man who was bitter about Rochelle's unconditional love for her son.
Ronald didn't have that kind of relationship with his mother. It seemed very foreign to him. It seems like an attack. It seems like a threat.
The prosecution asserts that when Ronald saw the letters addressed to Dan, his frustrations exploded.
With Ronald's history of having unstable relationships, being impulsive, he does have the tendency to allow jealousy to come forth and manipulate his decisions. So with the rage, finding out that you are possibly lying to me because I saw the letter, that rage takes over.
You have such ill will, hatred, and spite that you take someone's life. And that is what Ronald Gamble did.
His story of I just hit her once or twice real hard, the injuries are not consistent with somebody just hitting you twice. That's not what happened. He smashed her head into the floor,
vacation
which caused her death.
But Rochelle didn't die right away.
The question you have in the back of your mind is that if he did call 911 after he struck her, could she have survived her injuries? Could she still be with us today?
When it's the defense's turn, they argue that what happened to Rochelle was a tragic accident.
Their entire strategy at trial was to lessen the impact. They said, yes, he caused her death, but it wasn't murder, it was manslaughter. He didn't intend for her to die.
And to everyone's surprise, the jury agrees.
The jury actually had mercy on him, and he ended up getting convicted with manslaughter.
Rochelle's family is crushed because the manslaughter sentence only requires 3 years. Thankfully, the judge didn't go easy on Ronald, and she sentences him to the maximum, which is 15 years for manslaughter. But since he's getting credit for time already served, he will be eligible for parole in 2035.
It's infuriating. It's not enough for this angel, for this star, this bright light to have been just blown out like that. It's not, no. 99 years still wouldn't be enough.
Domestic cases always play to your heart because how could somebody that's supposed to love you do this to you?
Women who are in domestic violence situations should never suffer in silence. My advice is to get out of the situation as soon as possible.
And don't be afraid of judgment. Judgment will get you killed. The main thing is that you're around to tell your story. And in order to do that, in some cases, you have to utter the words, I need help.